Everyone is watching the clips right now. The throws, the footwork, the basement workouts going viral all over social media, it's everywhere. And if you scroll for even a few seconds, you'll see people already forming opinions. Some are hyping it up. Others are still doubting, still questioning, still trying to turn it into a debate. But here's the thing nobody's really talking about. The clips aren't the real story. Because what's happening right now goes way deeper than a few viral workouts. This isn't just a quarterback training in the offseason. This isn't just someone trying to get better. There's a shift happening and most people are completely missing it. While everyone else is focused on what's being posted, what's being said, and who's being compared, something very different is happening behind the scenes. The kind of change you don't fully understand until it shows up on the field. And that's what makes this moment feel different. Because this isn't loud, it's not forced, it's not someone trying to prove a point online, it's quiet, controlled, intentional. And when a player moves like that, when they stop talking and start building in silence, that's when things start to change fast. That's when doubt turns into fuel. That's when preparation turns into results. So while everyone else is still arguing about what he is, the real question is, are people ready for what he's becoming? At first glance, it just looks like another workout video. A few clips, some throws, a little footwork, and suddenly it's everywhere. People reposting it, reacting to it, breaking it down like it's just another off-season highlight. But if you really pay attention, this isn't normal. Because that basement, that setup, that's not just for content. That's a statement. Turf laid out inside the house, tight spaces forcing quicker decisions. Repetition over and over again with no distractions. No cameras in his face during every rep, no crowd, no noise, just controlled work in a closed environment. That tells you everything about where his mindset is right now. This isn't about looking good for social media. This is about building something. And there's a big difference between the two. Most players train to stay ready, they go through the motions, hit their workouts, post a few clips, and call it a day. But this feels intentional. Every movement looks sharper, every rep looks like it has a purpose behind it. That's not random improvement, that's obsession. Because when someone turns their own home into a training ground, that's when you know it's gone beyond routine. That's when it becomes part of who they are. It's no longer I need to train, it's this is what I do. And that's where things start to shift. You can even see it in the way he carries himself in those clips. There's no rush, no extra emotion, no trying to prove anything in the moment. Just focus, just execution, just stacking reps like it's second nature. That kind of energy doesn't come from hype. It comes from confidence that's being built behind the scenes. And that's what makes this dangerous. Because when a player starts working like this in silence, when they're not talking, not responding, not feeding into outside noise, that usually means they're preparing for something bigger than people expect. Something that doesn't need to be explained, only shown. And the craziest part is most people are still looking at this like it's just a cool setup, just a viral moment, just another off-season clip to scroll past. But this isn't just a basement. It's where the foundation is being built. And if that foundation is as strong as it looks, then what's coming next might catch a lot of people off guard. Because this level of focus doesn't just happen for no reason, it comes from something. But here, what really changed everything. It wasn't the workouts, it wasn't the clips, it wasn't even the improvements people are starting to notice. It was the response, or better yet, the lack of one. Because if you've been paying attention, you've probably seen the noise. The debates, the comparisons, the constant back and forth about where he stands, who's better, what he can or can't do, it's been non-stop. And usually players get pulled into that. They respond, they defend themselves, they try to prove people wrong with words before they ever get the chance to do it on the field. It becomes personal, emotional, distracting. But this time, that didn't happen. Instead, the message coming from his circle has been simple: ignore it. Control what you can control. And that sounds basic, but it's actually one of the hardest things to do when the spotlight is on you. Because when everyone is talking, when opinions are flying everywhere, it takes real discipline to stay locked in and not react. That's the shift. Because now, instead of feeding into the noise, he's completely detached from it. No back and forth, No subtle shots, no trying to win arguments online, just silence. In silence like that, it's not weakness. It's focus. It means the energy that would normally go into responding is being redirected somewhere else. Into preparation, into improvement, into stacking work day after day without interruption. And that's where things start to get dangerous. Because when a player stops caring about what people are saying, they start playing differently. Freer, more confident, less hesitation. They're not thinking about proving anyone wrong, they're just executing. That's a completely different mindset. And you can feel it building right now. Even in the clips, there's no sense of urgency to impress anyone, no extra flair, no trying to make something look viral. It's controlled, it's calm, it's deliberate. Like he already knows what's coming. And that confidence, it doesn't come from hype, it comes from preparation that most people never see. That's why this moment matters. Because while everyone else is still caught up in opinions, still debating, still trying to figure out where he fits, he's already moved past that stage mentally. He's not trying to convince anyone anymore. He's getting ready to show them. And the craziest part is when a player reaches that point, when they stop talking and start letting the work speak, it usually means one thing. The next phase is coming. And when it hits, all that noise, it doesn't just quiet down. It disappears. And this is where the conversation starts getting messy. Because while he's locked in, improving, and staying silent, the outside world is doing the exact opposite. The debates are getting louder, the comparisons are getting more aggressive, and one name that keeps getting thrown into the mix is Ty Simpson. Now here, where things get interesting. There's been a lot of buzz online with fans and even some analysts trying to frame this like it's a real competition, like it's still undecided, like there's something to figure out between the two. But if you really look at what's being said, and more importantly, what's being done, it starts to feel a little different. For example, reports suggest that Browns GM Andrew Berry didn't attend Ty Simpson's pro day. And while that might not seem like a huge deal on the surface, in the NFL, those kinds of decisions usually aren't random. Teams prioritize where they show up. They prioritize who they invest time into. And when you compare that to the attention Shedeur Sanders has been getting, it raises questions. Then you've got analysts stepping in. There's been talk from respected voices like Mel Kiper Jr., who reportedly pushed back on the comparison entirely, suggesting this might not even be a real debate. Now again, that's opinion, but when those kinds of opinions start stacking up, it shifts how people view the situation. Because now it's not just fans arguing online. It's people who study this for a living. But here, the key: none of this is official. It's all signals, patterns, conversations, and while they can point you in a direction, they don't tell the full story. That's why it's important to look at what's actually been shown on the field. One player has already dealt with real pressure, taken hits, played through chaos, stayed available week after week. The other still has questions surrounding consistency and durability based on what's been said publicly. And in the NFL, that matters more than people think. Because talent will always get attention, but availability keeps you on the field. And that's where the separation quietly starts to build. But here, what makes this even more interesting. While all these debates are happening, while people are picking sides and arguing back and forth, the person at the center of it all isn't engaging at all. No responses, no reactions, no effort to shut anything down. Just work. And that tells you everything. Because while everyone else is trying to define the narrative, he's letting it play out. And if things continue trending the way they are, this debate people keep talking about might not last much longer. And this is where the conversation stops being about opinions and starts being about reality. Because when you strip everything else away, the hype, the debates, the comparisons, one thing matters more than anything else at the quarterback position. Can you stay on the field? That's it. And this is where a clear difference starts to show. When you look at what Shedeur Sanders went through last season, it wasn't pretty. Constant pressure, protection breaking down, hits coming from every direction. We're talking about a quarterback who was sacked over and over again, play after play, week after week. And yet he stayed out there. He kept getting up, kept delivering throws, kept competing like nothing changed. That's not normal. Most quarterbacks don't come out of situations like that the same. It wears you down physically and mentally. But instead of breaking, he adapted. And that matters more than people realize. Because durability isn't just about avoiding injuries, it's about surviving chaos. It's about being able to take hits, reset, and still execute at a high level. That's what separates players who flash talent from players who can actually lead a team. Now, on the other side of the conversation, there have been mentions based on coach comments and reports that Ty Simpson has dealt with injuries in the past. Nothing being exaggerated here, just what's been publicly discussed. But in the NFL, even small concerns like that get magnified. Because teams aren't just evaluating who looks good in perfect conditions. They're asking a different question: who can hold up when everything goes wrong? And that's where things start to separate. One player has already shown he can handle the worst-case scenario and still perform. The other still has questions tied to consistency and availability. And again, this isn't about tearing anyone down, it's just about what's been seen versus what's still uncertain. Because availability is part of ability. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you're not on the field, it doesn't translate. It doesn't help the team. It doesn't build momentum. And that's why this matters. Because when teams evaluate quarterbacks, they're not just looking at arm strength or mechanics. They're looking at resilience, toughness, the ability to withstand a full season without breaking down. And right now, based on what's already been shown, one side of that conversation looks a lot more proven. But here's the part people keep overlooking. That experience, taking those hits, dealing with that pressure, that doesn't just prove durability. It builds something else. Confidence. The kind that doesn't shake under pressure, the kind that shows up when the pocket collapses, the kind that makes a quarterback dangerous when the game is on the line. And if that carries over into the next season, then this conversation might not stay close for much longer. And this is where things start getting really interesting, because now it's not just about what he's doing, it's about what the Browns are doing. And if you're paying attention, the signs are there. They're just not loud. Because in the NFL, teams don't always come out and tell you their plans. They don't announce who they're fully locked in on or how they're thinking long-term. Instead, they move quietly, through decisions, through priorities, through where they choose to spend their time and money. And right now there are signals. For example, reports suggest Andrew Berry didn't attend Ty Simpson's pro day. Now, on its own, that might not seem like a huge deal. But when you zoom out, front offices don't just skip things randomly. Every appearance, every visit, every evaluation is calculated. It tells you where their attention is going. And when you compare that to the level of interest shown toward Shedeur Sanders in the past, it starts to paint a picture, not a confirmed answer, but a direction. And that's how these situations usually develop. It's not one big announcement. It's a series of small decisions that slowly reveal what a team is thinking. And if you connect those dots, it starts to feel like the Browns are leaning toward something bigger. But here, where it gets even more important. It's not just about who they're watching, it's about what they're fixing. Because one of the biggest issues that's followed Shedeur Sanders throughout his career has been protection. He hasn't consistently had the luxury of a strong offensive line. Plays breaking down early, pressure coming fast, it's been a constant theme. And now, the Browns are investing heavily in that exact area. Spending serious money on the offensive line, making moves that don't always grab headlines but matter more than people realize. Because fixing the line isn't just a minor upgrade, it changes everything about how an offense operates. It gives the quarterback time. It allows plays to actually develop. It opens up the entire playbook. And for someone like Shedeur Sanders, that could be the missing piece. Because if he's already shown flashes under pressure, if he's already proven he can produce in less than ideal situations, then what happens when those conditions improve? That's the question nobody has a clear answer to yet. And that's what makes this so dangerous. Because now you're not just looking at talent or potential, you're looking at alignment. A quarterback putting in the work, developing the right mindset, while the organization around him starts building the right foundation. And when those two things meet at the same time, that's when everything can change fast. And this is the part nobody is talking about enough. The offensive line. Because if you really step back and look at the full picture, everything we've seen so far, every highlight, every throw, every moment, has come without one key thing: consistent protection. Think about that for a second. From Jackson State to Colorado, and even now in these conversations about the next level, one thing has followed him everywhere: pressure. Not occasional pressure, constant pressure, plays breaking down early, defenders getting through faster than they should, situations where most quarterbacks don't even get a fair chance to operate. And still he produced. Still stood in the pocket, still delivered throws, still showed flashes that made people pay attention. Now here where it gets interesting. Because if that's what he's been able to do under those conditions, what happens when those conditions actually improve? What happens when the pocket holds? What happens when he has an extra second, just one extra second, to read the field, set his feet, and make a decision without chaos closing in? That's the missing piece. And it's not a small one, it's everything. Because an offensive line doesn't just protect the quarterback, it unlocks the entire offense. Routes develop the way they're supposed to, timing becomes sharper, confidence grows not just for the quarterback but for everyone on the field. And for someone like him, that could completely change the conversation. Because right now, people are still evaluating him based on what they've seen in imperfect situations: tight windows, rushed throws, plays under pressure. And while those moments show toughness, they don't always show the full picture of what a quarterback can really be. That's why this matters so much. Because we haven't truly seen him in a clean, stable system yet. Not consistently. And that means there's still another level that hasn't been fully unlocked. Now add in what the Browns are doing. Investing heavily in the offensive line, putting real money into protection, making it clear without saying a word that they understand where the real issue has been. That's not random. That's intentional. Because when a team starts building from the line out, it usually means they're preparing for something bigger. They're not just trying to patch problems, they're trying to create stability. And stability is what allows quarterbacks to take that next step. So now you've got a player who's already proven he can handle pressure, potentially stepping into a situation where that pressure is reduced. That's where things change. Because if he's already dangerous under chaos, then what happens when the game actually slows down for him? That's the question nobody can fully answer yet. But if it plays out the way it's starting to look, then we're not just talking about improvement anymore. We're talking about a completely different level. And this is where things start to get even more serious, because now you're not just looking at the quarterback, you're looking at what's being built around him. And one name that keeps coming up in that conversation is Carnell Tate. Now, if you've been paying attention, you've probably seen the clips from his pro day. Smooth routes, clean breaks, controlled movement, nothing flashy, nothing forced, just polished football. And sometimes that's exactly what matters most. Because speed gets attention. But route running wins games. And what makes this interesting is the connection being talked about. Reports suggest Tate had a strong visit with the Browns, and when he spoke about the team, you could hear the interest. He didn't sound unsure, he didn't sound distant. It sounded real. Now again, nothing is confirmed. This is still the draft process and anything can happen. But when you start seeing mutual interest, when a player likes a team and a team is evaluating that player closely, it starts to form a picture. And if that picture becomes reality, it could change everything. Because adding a receiver like Tate isn't just about giving a quarterback another target. It's about adding reliability, someone who understands spacing, someone who can create separation without needing perfect conditions, someone who can be where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there. That builds trust. And trust between a quarterback and receiver is what takes an offense to another level. Because now, it's not just about making plays, it's about consistency, timing, rhythm, knowing that when you release the ball, your receiver is going to be exactly where you expect him to be. That's how offenses become efficient. And when you pair that with everything else that's already being built, the improved protection, the mindset, the preparation, it starts to feel like pieces are coming together at the same time. Not randomly. Intentionally. Because this is how real teams are built. Not just through one big move, but through multiple smart additions that complement each other. A quarterback putting in the work, an offensive line being strengthened, and now potentially weapons that actually fit the system. That's how you create identity. And once a team finds its identity, everything changes. The offense flows better, players start feeding off each other, confidence builds not just individually but collectively, and that's when things start to accelerate. Because now, it's not just about what one player can do. It's about what the entire unit can become. And if this connection between Shedeur Sanders and someone like Carnell Tate actually happens, if those pieces really come together, then this isn't just a rebuild anymore. It's the beginning of something much bigger. And now everything comes down to this. Because at some point, all the clips, all the workouts, all the conversations, they stop mattering. It's no longer about what we think, what we've seen in flashes, or what people are predicting. It becomes about one thing. Results. That's the reality flip. Because right now, we're still in that in-between stage. The stage where some people believe, some people doubt, and most people are still trying to figure out what's real. But in the NFL, that phase never lasts long. It always ends the same way. The games start and everything gets exposed. And when that moment hits, there's no more hiding behind opinions, no more debates, no more he might be this or he could be that. It becomes film. It becomes production. It becomes wins. And that's when narratives change fast. Because the same people who are questioning right now, if things go the way they're trending, they won't be asking, can he do it, anymore. They'll be asking something completely different. How far can he take this? That's how quickly the conversation flips. And what makes this situation so interesting is how it's being built. This isn't hype-driven, it's not loud, it's not forced into the spotlight. It's been developing quietly through preparation, through mindset, through small changes stacking up over time. That's what makes it dangerous. Because when something is built like this, when it's not rushed or overexposed, it tends to show up all at once, not gradually, suddenly. One stretch of games, one breakout performance, one moment where everything clicks. And from that point on, the conversation is different forever. But here are the key. It only happens if preparation meets opportunity. And right now, that's the biggest question. Because the preparation, that part looks real, the work, the focus, the mindset, it's all there, you can see it, you can feel it building. Now it comes down to the opportunity. Will the system support it? Will the protection hold up? Will everything around him come together at the right time? Because if it does, then this won't just be a solid season. This will be a turning point. Not just for him, but for the entire team. And that's why this moment matters more than people realize. Because we're watching the setup in real time. We're watching the foundation being built before the results show up. And when those results finally hit, everything we're seeing right now is going to make sense. So the real question is whether the potential is there. It's whether you're recognizing it early, or waiting until everyone else finally sees it too.